In the farthest reaches of the old kingdom, beyond the well-traveled roads and the villages warmed by lantern light, the land rises slowly into a chain of mist-covered hills. These hills, shaped by centuries of rain and wind, cradle the ruins of a forgotten fortress, an isolated stronghold left behind as the world changed around it. Its stone walls, cracked and hollowed by storms, still stand in defiance of time, like the last bones of a creature the earth refused to fully swallow. From a distance, the structure looks almost like a shadow carved into the ridge, a silent reminder of a world that vanished long before any living soul took its first breath. No banners hang from its towers now, and no armor clatters across its once busy walkways. Only the fog moves through the corridors, slipping between arches and drifting down staircases where the footsteps of watchmen once echoed. Travelers who pass near the ruins often speak of a quiet so deep, so absolute, that it feels as if the entire hill holds its breath. Birds avoid the towers, and even the wind seems to soften as it passes through the broken windows, as though unwilling to disturb whatever lingers inside. Some say the silence is simply the nature of abandoned places. Others whisper a different tale entirely. They claim that if one stands near the outer wall at dusk, when the sky darkens into a shade of fading blue and the mist begins to glow pale against the sinking sun, an unseen presence seems to watch from the shadows. A faint pressure in the air, the sense of someone standing just beyond sight. An echo of a figure whose name has long since disappeared from official records, but who remains curiously alive in the memory of the valley. From scattered documents, fading songs, and the fragmented recollections of wandering monks, a single story emerges about a knight who once guarded these empty halls. His name appears rarely and never with flourish. He is not tied to grand battles, royal councils, or glorious crusades. Instead, his story lives on in the quietest corners of history, a torn page discovered in a monastery, a rusted shield unearthed near the old trade road, and one lonely verse from a folk song that children once sang by firelight. Alone, these clues amount to almost nothing, but together they sketch the faint outline of a life touched by loyalty, solitude, and a duty that outlived its keeper. They tell of Sir Aldric of Varengate, a knight bound not by ambition or glory, but by an oath he carried until his last breath. Tonight, we follow these ancient threads into the heart of the ruined fortress. Step by step, we travel through mist, memory, and the echoes of the Middle Ages to uncover the quiet tragedy of the knight who once walked these halls. A man remembered not through triumphs, but through whispers, carried by the land he swore to protect. The fortress that rises from the mist-covered hills is believed to have been constructed in the late 12th century. These were years defined by shifting political alliances, the rise and fall of baronial families, and a constant struggle to maintain control over trade routes that shaped the economy of medieval Europe. Castles of that era served as both symbols of authority and essential defensive outposts. Power was fragile and danger came swiftly, sometimes in the form of rival lords testing borders, other times in the form of bandits who preyed on merchant caravans. Stone fortifications were the language of survival. Thick curtain walls defended the courtyard, narrow arrow slits allowed archers to hold back attackers, and tall battlements stretched toward the sky like jagged fingers prepared to claw at invading forces. For every grand castle remembered in history books, dozens more stood quietly across the countryside, watching, waiting, defending. Records preserved at a nearby monastery describe a trade route that passed directly beneath this fortress, connecting smaller villages in the valley to the broader feudal networks of the region. Merchants carrying wool, spices, iron, and grain depended on the safety of these roads. Knights, though idealized in stories, often spent their days riding these routes, escorting travelers, delivering messages between lords, and maintaining the fragile balance of order. There is disagreement regarding the fortress's origins. Some chroniclers attribute its construction to a minor noble house that vanished during the succession wars of the early 13th century. Others argue that the keep changed hands so frequently its history became muddled, each new lord erasing the traces of the last in an attempt to claim it as their own. Such erasures were not uncommon. Many castles lost their histories when their ruling families were defeated, displaced, or quietly absorbed into larger feudal powers. By the mid-14th century, documentation concerning the fortress abruptly ends. No royal decree mentions it, no tax records list its garrison, no chronicler writes of its fall. It simply disappears, slipping into obscurity at the same moment famine, disease, and conflict swept across the region. What remains now are the stones, and one persistent legend about the knight who served here long after the world forgot the fortress existed. The earliest surviving reference to Sir Aldric of Varengate appears in a monastery chronicle dated to 1298. The monk who wrote it kept simple notes, but his words carry a quiet respect for the knight's reputation. Aldric served under a minor lord whose lands stretched across the valley, a region often shaken by disputes between neighboring baronies. Though not a figure of high prestige, Aldric was tasked with protecting the most vulnerable section of his lord's domain, the winding trade path beneath the fortress, later known as Mist-Bound Keep. For years, Aldric carried out this duty with a consistency that rarely found its way into written records. While other knights sought tournaments or advancement in court, Aldric remained tied to the valley. He oversaw patrols, trained younger soldiers, negotiated peaceful resolutions with rival scouts, and escorted weary travelers through sections of the road known for ambushes. He lived in a world of small but vital tasks, chores that never made the pages of heroic epics but kept the region functioning. The monks describe him as humble, reserved, and unwavering in his responsibilities. He was often seen riding at dawn, his figure barely visible in the pale light, as if he belonged more to the landscape than to any human community. Children of the valley remembered him as the knight who handed them dried apples as their parents passed through the road. Merchants recalled his calm authority and his habit of scanning the ridge with careful eyes, as though the mist itself might reveal a threat. He was not famous, and yet those who crossed his path remembered him with surprising clarity. The Northern Incident fragments of documents tell us about a brief conflict near the northern boundary of the valley. One dispatch, damaged by water and age, recounts the night Aldric disappeared. The ink is blurred in places, but several lines remain legible. The fog was heavy tonight. Sir Aldric took 3 men to survey the ridge, for riders were seen by the old oak road. The men returned before dawn. Sir Aldric did not. The surviving soldiers gave conflicting accounts, perhaps due to exhaustion, fear, or the thick fog that blanketed the hills. One claimed Aldric rode ahead and vanished from sight. Another insisted they were ambushed, but escaped in the confusion. The third said nothing at all, refusing to speak of the night for the rest of his life. A legal notice settling Varengate's estate confirms Aldric did not return. No body was recovered, no weapon, no trace except the silence that followed, echoes in song generations later. A rural folk song preserves a softer, more emotional version of the story. The knight of Varengate rode into the mist, his oath unbroken still. The valley waited for his return, but the night grew colder and still. The melody of the song is slow, somber, almost like a lullaby. It was sung mostly by shepherds and travelers, passed along as a reminder of the knight who never returned from his patrol. The lyrics varied slightly between villages, but the essence remained the same. Aldric disappeared into the fog, bound to his duty until the last. The seal ring. In the 19th century, an archaeological team surveying the ruins discovered a corroded seal ring near the inner courtyard. The crest matched that of the Varengate line. Curiously, the ring had been placed carefully beside a stone step, as though someone had set it there intentionally rather than dropped it in haste. This discovery suggested a possibility historians had overlooked. Aldric, or someone carrying his insignia, may have returned to the keep before he vanished completely from the world. A quiet end. Taken together, these clues suggest Aldric's final moments were not marked by battle or betrayal, but by something far subtler. A quiet separation from his men, a long walk through fog-soaked hills, and a final attempt to reach the keep he had guarded his whole life. Perhaps he was wounded. Perhaps he was weary. Perhaps the fog disoriented him, and he followed the faint outline of the fortress walls like a beacon in the night. Or perhaps he simply chose to walk into the mist, letting the weight of years fall gently from his shoulders. No record tells us what truly happened, but the persistence of his memory, through documents, songs, artifacts, and the whispers of travelers, suggests his absence left a deeper mark than anyone expected. Today, the fortress that once anchored Aldric's world stands as a weathered silhouette against the evening sky. Its towers, worn by centuries of storms, seem to lean toward one another like old men sharing a quiet secret. Vegetation creeps across the stone, weaving itself into the cracks and embracing the structure as though nature is slowly taking it back. At dusk, the hills fall into shadow, and the fortress becomes an outline more felt than seen. The wind softens as it moves through the broken arches. Moss muffles the echo of footsteps. Ivy drapes itself across the walls like a curtain of forgotten memories. Walking beneath the ancient gatehouse, one can almost hear the subdued murmur of soldiers exchanging weary words during night patrols, a faint clatter of imagined armor, the muted thump of boots against stone. These sounds, of course, are nothing more than echoes shaped by the mind, but in places touched by devotion, imagination, and memory often blend. Medieval belief held that individuals who lived with unwavering loyalty left a trace of themselves in the places they inhabited. Sir Aldric was such a man. His oath to the valley carved itself into every stone he guarded. Perhaps that is why his story refused to vanish completely. On certain evenings, when the mist gathers thick and the world falls silent, the fortress seems almost whole again. The jagged edges of the walls soften, the broken staircases appear repaired. For a brief moment, the keep appears as it once was, sturdy, watchful, and alive. In those moments, some claim they see a lone figure standing atop the wall, gazing out over the valley, a quiet guardian, a patient watcher, a presence that lingers not out of duty, but out of a bond formed with the land itself. Imagined or not, these fleeting visions breathe life into the legend of Sir Aldric. And so, the story of Sir Aldric of Varengate comes to a quiet close, not with a bold revelation or a dramatic final scene, but with reflection. His life was not one of triumphs etched in marble monuments. It was a life of consistent, devoted service, of protecting roads, settling minor disputes, and ensuring travelers reach their destinations safely. History often forgets men like Aldric. They leave behind few records, no heirs, and no grand victories. But sometimes, the quietest lives echo the longest. Through scattered fragments, preserved artifacts, and the murmured songs of villagers, Aldric's memory carried itself forward through centuries. Tonight, as you rest, let his story settle softly around you, the fog-covered hills, the forgotten fortress, the knight who walked faithfully into the mist. If you're still awake, I hope these ancient echoes brought peace to your mind. If sleep has already taken hold, may your dreams be gentle, filled with quiet landscapes, soft winds, and the steady footsteps of a knight who never truly left his post. If tonight's journey brought you a moment of calm or a spark of curiosity, you're always welcome to wander these stories again. There will be more tales waiting here, quiet histories, forgotten paths, and gentle echoes from the past. Whenever your evening calls for a peaceful escape, you know where to find me. Rest well, traveler.